the first task here for me was bringing in a couple new coaches. And so I think as a player, my understanding of the magnitude of that decision and the process that needed to take place, I think it is really deep, because for me, and I've always thought this as a player, like the coaching staff of a team, and I wouldn't even say just the head coach, because that's something I've actually really, my eyes have been open to since I got here, is the coaching staff as a team. Like it's a group effort. It's not just the one head coach. I think often we think about like who's the head coach of the team, and that's what we think about, but that's not how it works. That's like just looking at the star player on a team. That's not what causes the team to be successful or not. So for me, looking at piecing together the right staff, like that is make or break for the player experience. And as we know from seeing in the media, from everything that goes on in the league, the player experience, from that, everything else emanates out. If the players are happy and feel like they're being treated professionally, they're getting better, they can compete to be their best on the field, everything else in the organization builds off of that. And if that's not right, like everybody knows, it's no secret. So for me, I think that is probably like potentially the single most important work I will have to do, especially in the short term. And I really viewed it as like doing it for the players. It is for the organization, it's for the league, it's bigger than that, but really it's for the players. This affects their everyday life and like all the way down to their mental health. So I honestly forgot where the question even started, but that's where I went with
you took it where
I don't know.
You're fine. You took it completely where it needed to go. I think that's a little bit underrated, that maybe the former player experience, specifically as a women's soccer player in a women's pro league, is huge and important. And
that's where it started, with the player experience.
Yeah, that shouldn't it shouldn't be overlooked. But you touched on it a little bit, so let's get into the nitty gritty. I'm sure our listeners would love a little bit of insider info if you're willing to give it. But that was one of the very first big things that you were tasked with in this position, was appointing some new head coaches. Freya Coombe departed the club, took a new position with the forthcoming Angel City FC club that they'll be joining the league in 2022. And then all of a sudden, you really had to tighten up that GM hat, and there was a coaching search that went underway. Didn't really feel like you guys had a lot of time to maybe sort of get that going, but the club eventually announced the appointment of Scott Parkinson as head coach, and then for the assistant coach side of things, Goebel Yanez as the first assistant. So why this duo? What was the search like? What was the vetting process like? What would you like our listeners to know about this process?
Yeah, so I think the first most important thing is, like the way things go down in the media is sometimes like a little bit misleading in terms of timelines, especially, I would say. So while like it looked like it all happened really quickly, and relatively it was a quick turnaround, but I mean, the reality is I had about a month from when we had internal conversations with Freya, which, by the way, were left on really good terms. Like, we wish her the best. Freya's a lovely person. I didn't get to know her so much as a coach, but like, I think like people try to bring up some drama or things that don't exist. Like, we left that in a really good place on both sides. And so there was about a month before it made sense for her to step away and for us to transition to new coaches. So whereas maybe on Twitter, it looked like it was like boom, boom. There was a little bit of time. Like, I was really, I had time to really think about it and to have a lot of conversations. And the first thing that was really important to me was, I guess there were two things going into it, just speaking totally transparently about this, is that I felt that from a totally outsider perspective, having just been a player in the league and seeing all these hires, that it had been done in the past from various clubs in the women's soccer world where either there was a lazy or a cheap hire. And I'm not even speaking of anything in particular. I think it's just the commentary, like sometimes it spirals here. So I was really committed to making sure that I was very thorough with the scope of my search, the diversity of candidates, the conversations I had with coaching mentors and people who I really respect in the field to get their input. So I considered I think when we looked at the numbers, it was like over 30 candidates from like literally all over the world, all different backgrounds, all different types of people, to make sure that I had a really good picture of like what was out there for this. And then just thinking about like there were no constraints in going into this. Like it didn't have to be a certain person. It didn't have to fit a certain budget. I was going to bring the club the best possible solution, and then we would make it work. That was my mindset going into it. And that was really important to me based on like what I had heard and seen swirling around out there. So, in all those conversations and stuff, the thing that really struck me in particular about both Scott and Bev, there were a few things that I think actually they share in common, although they come from very different backgrounds and a different coaching experience. But one is, their passion for the craft of coaching. And this is something that's kind of foreign to me, but I appreciate it as a player. And I know Bev as a player and how she approached her craft. But when she spoke about herself as a coach, and when Scott spoke about himself as a coach and the way he approaches things, it was a real dedication to it, very similar to what I hear from the players about how they're approaching things and how much they care and what they're putting into this. And I think that was really important. And then additionally, in looking at the timing of this transition, we needed, we have a really great rest of our coaching staff here. And I will give a special shout out to, Becky Tweed has been amazing on the coaching staff. She's really helped with this transition, as has Daniel Ball, the goalkeeper coach, and Philip Congleton, who's, our sports performance specialist. And they've really helped with the transition. So it's not like we're not starting fresh from totally clean slate. So I wanted to look at people too who I think would come in and mesh well with our current staff and mesh well with the current players. We have a transition to make. We're not starting where everyone's coming in the beginning of preseason. So I looked at, who is going to help us make a smooth transition and work well with the players we have, what I'm hearing from them. I took their feedback, the things they need and want moving forward, as well as same thing from the staff. So who's going to be good right now to make that transition? And then who also really fits within the club culture and where I see this club wanting to go. So understanding that from ownership, from staff, from players is what is the core, the essence of what this club is about, and who's going to support that moving forward. So really, honestly, I feel like I was happy when I finally narrowed down and came to the decision on those two. And I'll tell you guys that I think the thing that really solidified it for me was that I know Bev Yanez, is so loved. Like as a player, like there's probably not a more loved player in NWSL. And I'll tell you, but the Twitter reaction from people who know her and know Scott, like honestly, I didn't think anyone could rival her. And I think Scott maybe rivaled her. It was literally tweet for tweet. Scott, mate, so happy for you. Congrats on the role. Love this for you. And then great, Bev. Oh, wow, Bev in all caps. And honestly, it went back and forth. And I didn't really know that. Like I knew that people really liked and respected Scott, but I didn't think I knew the extent of it prior to seeing that. And I was honestly blown away. But they are lovely human beings first. And I think they have come in and it's been pretty seamless in terms of transitioning. So yeah, that was a real in-depth look at the process and what's taken us.